What's up, guys? Today I want to talk to you about my Savannah Monitors, Zeus and Athena. Savannah Monitors are really cool pets, but they are definitely not for the beginner reptile enthusiast. But today I'm just going to give you a little bit of information on their setup and how I take care of them, their diet, heating, humidity, just a broad setup and care video for the most part. But like I said, this isn't the pet for the beginner. This is intermediate to above. Some people say they're a great starting reptile for somebody that is wanting to get something a little bigger than the bearded dragon. Me, on the other hand, I do not suggest this for the next step from a bearded dragon. I know, actually, this is one of my step-ups from the bearded dragon, but I wish I started with something a little bit easier to take care of. We'll go more in depth in that later in the video, so stick around and check out what I've got to tell you.
Alright guys, this is my setup for Zeus and Athena. As you can see, they've got their heat side here, which has two heat bulbs. Big flat stone. And there's a hide back here that goes about a foot underneath the substrate. And I have a big pile of substrate in this back corner, and they can go underground and go hide. And then I have some driftwood for them to climb around on. Now, the biggest mistake with a Savannah Monitor is that people think they come from the desert. It is in their name. They're also known as the Bosque Monitor, but most people actually call these guys a Savannah Monitor. But these guys come from the savannah in Africa. They do not come from the desert. They don't come from... They come from an area that is right outside of a desert. It's a savanna. It's kind of like Oklahoma or northern Arizona. It does get very hot. It gets hotter than those regions of North America. Not really getting it exactly right, but it is definitely not a complete straight sand desert. A lot of people believe that this could be the right setup for a Savannah Monitor. This is actually the right setup for a bearded dragon, a 40-gallon breeder tank to 75-gallon. People think 40 to 60 or a 75-gallon is perfect for a Savannah Monitor, and it is most definitely not. You want to go with an enclosure that is at least 8 feet long by 4 feet wide by 4 feet tall and have 6 inches of substrate. If you can go more, then that is great, because they actually live in burrows, that they have burrows that are 2 to 4 feet underground, maybe even 5 feet deep in the ground. And that's actually where it comes into humidity comes into play. Since they can actually dig in the ground, then that means they're not digging in sand, they're not digging in really loose soil. They're actually digging in soil that is able to hold. And for soil that is able to hold, that means there has to be humidity. Humidity of at least 60 to 70%. The ground of their enclosure, I use a sand, topsoil, and cypress mulch mix. And I actually need to get in here and mix it around again. As you can see, it's kind of compacted down. And I'll open this up. I see Zeus wanting to fly out of here. If you can see, it's compacted down. It used to actually be up to the level of this piece of wood here. So, I'm going to have to mix that back up here pretty soon. I mix it about once a month. But these guys just roam around in here so much that it packs down quite a bit. And me spraying down the water is going to compact it down again too. I'm going to say this now, and I'm going to say it a couple times in this video. I am definitely no expert on these guys. I've just been looking up quite a bit of information and tweaking things here and there. I'm actually about to change something else again in here that I'm going to make their burrow or cool hide even bigger, because I have been reading up that in the wild, they are in their burrow quite a bit of time. Now, a lot of people say house these animals separately. I say house them separately as well. I have been keeping these guys together for a little while, but Athena, or Zeus, actually has another enclosure that is back here that I have been doing some work to. But this big enclosure right here is actually Zeus's enclosure. I'm going to be moving him back in here, but I'm trying to actually breed them right now. That's why they're together. They've been together for about 2 months now, and they're going to be split up again in the future. Now my suggestion is definitely to house your reptiles in solitary. That means keep them by themselves, but one animal to a tank or enclosure. There is exceptions to the rule, as in like Stewie and Stella over here, that they've been together their whole lives. They are, one is a male and one is a female. This is the male right here basking on the log, and then the female's up there on that branch. Now with most reptiles, you put male to male together, they're gonna fight. If you were to put Ozzy over here and Stewie together, they would fight. It's the same thing with Savannah Monitors. If you had two males together, they would fight. Really, a male and a female, female, male, 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 whatever, they will fight with Savannah Monitors. That's just how they are. They're very territorial. As I said earlier, though, these guys I am trying to breed, but it hasn't been successful so far. So they're probably going to be getting split up, and I'm not going to be breeding Savannah Monitors. And I will say it is very difficult to sex a Savannah Monitor. You have to pop hemipenes, which means you hold them up and you will bend back their tail a little bit and pop hemipenes. I do not suggest you to try this at home. You go to your local reptile store, and if somebody there says they know how to do it, you put your trust into their hands, allowing them to do something like this. They do this with snakes and other lizards that they hide their sex organs too well. Like bearded dragons, you can see bumps. They're what is it called? Can't even think. Well, there's two bumps near the tail. And also with male bearded dragons, they're going to show a black beard, a male will, and they will bob their head up and down. Females will usually wave their arms. And this is all a dominance thing, or it will be a territorial thing. It will also be to attract another mate. So every once in a while you'll see Stewie bobbing his head, and Stella, she will be waving her arms, but she hasn't been doing that lately. He's just been bobbing his head every once in a while, and that's just because he's showing that this is his territory. Usually if he's done eating and he runs back up to his log, he'll start bobbing his head for a territorial thing. Alright, now I'm going to talk about temperatures and humidity with Savannah Monitors. I use a laser pointer temperature gauge and check the temperature every once in a while just to make sure it's on key. I use two different types of heat bulbs to achieve their heat. There is the solar glow and a sun glow. They are both UVB and UVA bulbs. So they produce heat and UVB. People say you do not have to have UVB with Savannah Monitors. I really think that it is a thing that you can, anything that's going to bask under a heat bulb and needs calcium to survive, to be able to digest, and their other vitamins, is probably not a bad idea to have UVB. So I suggest having a UVB bulb over them. I will say I didn't start them with UVB bulbs. I actually just bought like regular heat bulbs and got it to the right temperature and put them with that. But now I suggest UVB bulbs, and you can see that Athena is getting a nice little bask in now. She just got out of her cool hide over there. Now she's wanting to bask. What I also suggest is having a rock or a spot that is big enough for them to bask their entire body in. If Athena was to crawl up here, she's still in that heat. The heat zone is kind of this whole area, but the main area is, where the heat is actually hitting rock instead of bedding. But she can crawl up, put her head right here, and her tail will still be able to hit the end of this. Zeus is just a little bit bigger, but he is still able to sprawl his entire body out and be able to get that heat. To be able to get an area that big enough with heat, there is really no heat bulb that produces a large enough space for that. You're going to have to use 2+ heat bulbs. If you have an enclosure that is taller than 4 feet, you're probably going to have to buy a 3rd, possibly 4th heat bulb. I have 3 spots that I can plug in heat bulbs. But there's another one behind there. And I used to have 3, but there really wasn't a point. I was achieving the right basking temperature. And their basking temperature that I go for is around 120. Some people go up to 130. And the rock can actually read up to 150. If you were to gauge the temperature, they can in Africa. If you were to ever take a heat gun
and point it at a rock that a Savannah monitor may be basking at, it could be up to even 160 degrees. It's not 160 degrees outside, but that rock is 160 degrees. So what I also have is I'll even hook a temperature gauge and have it floating in the air just to get the gauge, because I don't really have a probe that works too well. There's these probes that come with temperature gauges that you can gauge the temperature of the room, but you can also stick it on the side over here or in the back and be able to gauge the temperature. The whole enclosure sits at around 85 degrees, and if you were to gauge down in this hole, there is a lot more topsoil and it stays cooler down in there. It is about 75 to 80 degrees all the way in the back. That is also under about 6 inches of bedding in the back here, the area that she's sitting in. So you can have temperatures all the way from 75 degrees all the way up to about 120 in their heat spot. It's kind of crazy in 8 feet that you can have that big of a difference, but it does actually happen. So I've achieved that pretty well, which like I said earlier, I'm going to be even throwing a different hide in here that's even bigger. I'm going to use something like one of these tubs and cut a hole for them to go in, or build a box out of plywood or something like that in the next couple days. So you can check that out in a new video. Alright guys, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about humidity. With these guys, what I usually like to do that works the best is to open this door on up. I have my spray bottle sitting right here. Pump it back up. Since he's interested in what the heck the noise was. I'm going to spray down the heat area, their basking area. This will raise the humidity. I do this probably once a week, maybe more, maybe less, just depends on the humidity in here. As of right now, I'm doing this about twice a week. Probably 3 times a week. And I do like a full down mist, but I try to spray this stone down a lot, because the heat lamps up here are going to help evaporate that into the air. If you dry these guys out too much, it's like if you were in the desert or somewhere really cold that's dry and trying to breathe that air, you eventually start drying out and become dehydrated. These guys can become dehydrated and have health issues with that. It does take a long time for things like that to happen. These guys are very hardy, but it will shorten their life. Now, if you were to stick your head in here, which I don't suggest whenever these guys are in here, it's very humid already just from spraying that down, and that's probably going to dry up. That water on that stone's going to dry up in less than 3 minutes or so. What are you doing, buddy? A lot of people use the digital thermometers and hygrometers, which those are completely fine, but I actually use these little regular old school temperature gauge and hygrometer, and I just set those on that rock, and I'll move them around to a couple of different places. Zeus is gonna end up biting me. Can't focus. I'll move him over there. And in just a few, I've had these sitting in here for a little while, but as you can see, this is hitting about 80, which is perfectly fine. That is going to dry up with the heat bulbs in a little bit, and it's not going to be that high. The temperature I'm going to set right there. Since I sprayed, it's going to be a little bit lower. 110, which is set about 120 is perfect. Put that on the cool side. So you're going to go over here and grab this temp gun gauge that's sitting over here. It's hard to see that temperature, but it is around 78 degrees, which is perfect for the cool side. You wouldn't want to go any lower than 70 degrees.
And this room's average temperature is about 68 degrees. Alright, we're about to get to the fun stuff. We're about to actually get to feed the Savannah Monitors. What I do, since I'm housing two together, I feed them separately, just because they will fight and because one could eat more than the other. More than likely Zeus in here is going to eat more. I actually had to separate Athena. I put her in that tub just so I wouldn't have to contend with two different Savannah Monitors, but I didn't want to have an empty enclosure for you guys to look at, so I'm going to go make up their food, and then I'll be right back, and I will show you how I feed my Savannah Monitors. Alright guys, now I'm going to show you the average diet that I do with the Savannah Monitors. There's rat pups, the cat food, and some dubia roaches. I'm going to shake them in this container. This is calcium. Try to get them covered as best as possible. This is every couple days. I feed them this diet, and I'll mix it around with a lot of different things. Take that back out of there. I have 3 dubias each. Sometimes more, just depends. They ate yesterday about this same diet, and it was about twice the amount of what I'm feeding them right now. This is about what their food bowls look like when I'm done. I got 3 dubias in there, sometimes more than half a can of that cat food each. And again, that could be a whole can, just depends on how much I think they're going to eat. If they're still seeming like they need to eat a lot more, if they're just gobbling that stuff down real fast, then I grab them more food. I also got 2 rat pups each for these guys. I'm going to carry this in here. And with any of the cat food you ever feed these guys, you want to make sure it is a high-grade cat food, and I stick with shrimp or whitefish or cod, and there is also tilapia brands that you can use as well. Some people may disagree with me on the cat food thing, but I like to add a little bit of their multivitamin to the cat food, and calcium. As you can see, it is kind of white, but I've sprinkled calcium on there. These guys are munching away at their dubia roaches and cat food, but she is not. She's trying to get out of here. Hey, you hear me? These are my dubias here. And all I do is grab a couple of these and shake them up in one of my mixer things here. Just take them and spin them around in this, and I got calcium in the bottom. I throw that in with them. And that is one diet. You can also feed them the whole unpeeled shrimp. Make sure they're organic. They are a little fatty, so you don't do a ton of them. That's it. Every once in a while, kind of meal. I feed my guys twice a week, possibly 3 times. Just depends on how much they ate the last time they ate, so, or how hungry I think they are. Today they seem like they're pretty hungry, so probably gonna be grabbing them more dubias. You can see whenever they start slowing down, you'll start knowing that, you know, time to cut it back, because they will eat until they're about to explode. They will eat anything you give them, so you want to be careful with overfeeding. I try to feed them enough that they'll eat in 10 minutes. That's pretty much the rule with any reptile. Not every reptile. Of course, there's snakes that, as long as they get their food down. Clean up the rest of that slop mess. Alright, so my overview, my thoughts on who a Savannah Monitor would be a good pet for would probably be for somebody that has had bigger lizards in the past, whether that be a tegu or a Aki's monitor would be a good beginning monitor choice. A tegu isn't a monitor, but you know the care can be somewhat similar, and the size. And also, it'd be good for somebody that had a nice amount of space. You'd want to make sure that you have at least an 8 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot area, and it'd be good for somebody that knows that you're going to be having to feed them a varied diet. I feed mine, as I said earlier, a mixture of dubia roaches, mealworms, waxworms. Not too many worms at all whatsoever, really. That's just kind of mixed in with their food. That cat food that I showed you earlier. I also feed them raw meats. Mainly I'm going to be feeding shrimp and tilapia, but every once in a while I will get like fresh chicken. And I also feed eggs every once in a while, hard-boiled eggs or just cooked eggs. You don't want to add any salt or anything like that to them, of course. And you can also feed them random scraps and things like that from different animals. I've fed chicken gizzards and small chicken legs. But you want to make sure they're very, very small legs. And you can also feed chicks, baby chickens. You can feed button quail. I know some reptile guys out there that they breed their own button quail. And every once in a while you can be feeding mice and small rat pups. I usually don't like to feed live. People say that it's good for them to have the exercise and chasing them, but I find that they could possibly get bedding in their mouth and stuff like that, especially whenever I have this cypress mulch mix. I don't want them grabbing one of those and choking on that or something like that. I feed them outside of the enclosure whenever I'm feeding them something that they're going to go crazy after, because they love their mice and they love their rat pups. So I'll bring them out here on the floor, and what I actually do is I have them kind of chase after it. Then I'll dangle it up in the air and have them jump after it, and they'll run back and forth after it and stuff like that. And then end up just giving it to them. Or with Zeus, I can hand feed. Now Athena, I cannot, as I said earlier, that she is a little bit too feisty for me to hand feed. She'll bite me. So, but that is my overview on their feeding. It is a discussed topic. I know there's a lot of different ideas. There's also, I've just added one more. You can feed them earthworms. You don't want to go outside and catch them unless if you're in a very rural area that you know you're not going to have any pesticides or anything like that, or weed killers and things like that in the ground, or any other stuff that's in the ground that could harm them. So, a lot of information all at once. I hope it wasn't too much all at once. So, that's my overview for Savannah Monitors. As I said earlier, definitely not for the beginner, but this is my take and how I take care of mine.
Alright guys, thanks for watching the video. If you'd like, please click up here. There's going to be a link to my Facebook, Instagram, and my Twitter. If you want to follow me on those, it'd be great. You can check out different stuff that's happening in the pet room that I'm not always going to be posting on YouTube. I got different pictures of my pets on Instagram, for sure. And it is also my personal Instagram, so you might see some funny stuff that I'm up to in other different hobbies that I'm into. There's also going to be a link down here for my RC planes, that I fly RC planes around my house. I've also gone to a couple of different places. I've flown in Branson, Missouri, and flown in the Smoky Mountains. There's a whole entire playlist for me flying in the mountains. I flew over a river, and I flew over some pretty cool mountains, and you see a lot of wildlife, or not wildlife, but you see a lot of trees in the sky. It looks beautiful down there. It was such a fun time. So, and those were videos from last year. I'm also making some winter flying videos, and those will be in the description. I'll have all this stuff in the description below. So if you want to check those out, that'd be so super awesome if I can talk. So, again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions, please leave a comment below. I am more than happy to answer any comments. Like I said earlier, I'm not an expert, but these guys are doing great for me. They're very active, very healthy Savannah Monitors. So, thanks for watching. Have a great day.
He's behind me.